So I stopped him, got him over, said, let's have a look in your bag, mate. It was full of ladies' knickers. Absolutely chocker. Ladies' knickers and bras. So I ended up in Middlesbrough in 1989, which was extremely busy. Lots of street crime, lots of burglaries, lots of assaults, taking cars, etc. It was like a tsunami of crime, really, in those days. Organised crime in terms of Cleveland has been going on for a lot of years. Importations, heroin, cocaine, ecstasy. So the first major case was the Dr. David Birkett got murdered in early 1990. The DCI received a anonymous letter basically taunting him that he's not going to catch the killer. We did a search of the actual premises and found an empty Co-op carrier bag. On that bag, eventually we found a partial thumbprint. Inside the carrier bag was a hammer that actually was used to kill the doctor. He was hit 19 times in the head. And after about 6 weeks of very painstaking work, Brian Leonard got a call to say, we've found your man. It was a guy called Reginald James Wilson who lived in Middlesbrough. When we did the house, it was like a treasure trove. Under the stairs, we found a rocket launcher, guns, crossbows, like an arsenal of bullets, etc., underneath the stairs. He came on my radar when I was called to a shooting. Ray, can you come out? Lee Duffy's been shot. He's in Middlesbrough General Hospital. So I went to see him, and he was the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. Unfortunately, the next time after that was when I got a phone call in the early hours of the morning. Ray, you need to come out. Lee Duffy's been killed. I got the job of going to the morgue. We went and he was lying on the slab with just something over his modesty. And he looked so peaceful. Actually, the surgeon I knew said that if Lee had stood still once he'd been knifed, he'd have still been alive. But Lee Duffy doesn't stand still. Lee Duffy runs after Alison, and basically, as he's running, his lifeblood's pouring out of the wound. So Martin Road was filled with Lee Duffy's blood.
Today we have got Ray in the podcast studio, and this interview pertains, some of it, to the Lee Duffy case. We've had an endless fascination on the podcast about all the aspects of Lee Duffy. We've had many people come on from the underworld community who have talked about Lee Duffy, but we've not had anyone come on from law enforcement talk about Lee Duffy. So Ray was the detective sergeant on the initial case, and then on the murder case, he was second in command. But it's not just going to be about Lee Duffy. We're going to get to that. Ray's also worked on several other high-profile cases, including Dr. Birkett, the Wacky Backy Boat with Phil Berryman and his multi-million smuggling operation, and also the murder of Kate Simpson, a 93-year-old who was found wrapped up in a carpet. She'd been burgled. Huge thank you to Jamie Boyle for arranging this interview. And Ray's book is going to be coming out next year. All the links for Jamie and Ray's stuff will be in the description box below the video. So there's a whole slew of books now, and we've published the audiobooks for Jamie on most of the books that he's got out there. So really fascinating stories, so please check them out. Huge thank you then for coming on, Ray.
No problem.
So as a kid then, where did you grow up and did you aspire to join the police as a kid?
I didn't. I grew up in a place called Jarrow, which is on South Tyneside. Famous quite recently for an anniversary, the Jarrow March, which was in 1936. It also has, I suppose, Steve Cram, the runner, is another Jarrow person.
What was the march about?
The march was about unemployment. The people of Jarrow, the unemployment was something like 80%. Shipyards had closed down, and this was a march from Jarrow to London to hand a petition in. I think the Prime Minister at the time, Stanley Baldwin, didn't take any notice of it. But 3 or 4 years later, the war started, and Jarrow sort of came back to being because of the need to build ships. So I'm a Jarrow lad. I went to school in Jarrow, grew up in Jarrow in a council house in Jarrow, and I sort of never aspired, never even thought. There's no police in the family. A bit of teaching in the family. My uncle was Uncle Arthur was a Lancaster bomber pilot in the war, which he was a bit of a hero of mine. He went on to be involved in teaching, and he actually ended up as headmaster at Eton, which was he was a sort of a figure that I could follow in my youth. So my youth really, my formative years. My dad died unfortunately when I was 5, and he was obviously a big part of my life. My mum remarried after 3 years, and to be fair, my stepfather did his best. He was a train driver, so we used to get free tickets to go all over the place. My grandparents lived in Berkett upon Tweed in the Borders, so I used to go up there a lot and spent a lot of time in that area.
Did your dad get ill then to die at 5 or something?
He had a heart attack.
Oh my goodness, how old was he?
He was actually 50. He was in his late 50s.
Yeah.
He married my mum. My mum was a lot younger. Mum was 20 odd years younger. But you can imagine you only imagine now the impact of that on a 5-year-old, because between 5 and 9. My mum had to keep working. In those days, there wasn't the unemployment benefit.
It's been devastating.
So in a lot of ways, in those formative years, I had to look after myself. I had two half brothers. My dad had two boys who were a lot older than me, but they, it was hard times. And I think looking back over the years, you realise that you've sort of had to. You've had to get on your own 2 feet. But the policing side of things didn't happen really for a lot of years later. I was always involved in my oldest brother played for Newcastle United till he was 16, and then he got TB and couldn't play. So I was always involved in football from a young age. And I was mentioning to Jamie that when I was just 10 in junior school, I organised some friendlies. The school didn't have a team. Beedburn Primary didn't have a team, so I organised games against other schools because the teacher couldn't be bothered to organise it. So I was managing a team at 10-year-old.
Wow.
So I mean, like I say, football and games, etc. was my life.
Any interest in the subjects taught at school?
And yeah, I thought I was definitely more of my dad was a really good artist. Could have been a professional artist, there's no doubt about it, and my oldest brother. So I loved art, PE, obviously, and I liked history and geography. And I, in later years, which we'll come on to, that was to my benefit. But my ambition as I went through senior school in Jarrow was to do something. I wanted to be a professional footballer, no doubt about it. I got a trial for Middlesbrough when I was 16, which didn't come off. But I played for the district team and played for the local teams. And when I was 16, and I tell this to the kids now when I teach them, I ended up with 4 GCSEs, which wasn't very good, considering I was quite a bright lad. And somehow or other, I managed to get myself a job with British Telecom as an apprentice in Newcastle in the exchange, and I managed to get myself on a course for 2 years, a business course, which would give me another an A level, and 2 GCSEs, which would be 6, because my ambition turned to being a PE teacher, which was clearly to do with my involvement in football, etc. So those 2 years that I was 16, 17 and going to 18, I looked around and there was various college courses. And I managed to, when I got to the 18th birthday, going into my 19th, I managed to get to Newcastle University as train as a PE teacher, but also train as outdoor pursuits, canoeing, sailing, etc. So it was an absolute perfect life. So the 3 years at university were the best years of my life. I mean, I was saying to Jamie that the ratio was 5 women to one bloke. So it didn't take any.
What actual years were they?
That was 1972 to 75. So it was 18 to 21.
Right. So that when like the disco music was out
Absolutely,
and everything.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I was talking to Jamie about this. We actually had, believe it or not, we had Hot Chocolate, which was a top band at university, which was a total coup for the university, total, because you can imagine it, like Newcastle University. And Errol Brown singing. Yeah. It was packed.
That wasn't that I Believe in Miracles.
That's the ones.
You sexy thing.
All them. So that you can imagine those 3 years of my life were like tremendous. Yeah. From a sort of domestic point of view, I met a girl at college who was a year younger than me, and stupidly we got engaged when I was I would have been 20 and she'd have been 19, far too young. But we enjoyed ourselves. My last year at uni, which was 74, 75, a friend of mine was playing up in the Scottish League for Arbroath. At that time, Arbroath were in the old First Division or Premier League in the last season. And he managed to get me a trial at Arbroath, and I actually played for Arbroath in 1975, which was fantastic because I scored on my debut against Hearts because I used to play centre forward. So in that way, that sort of kept me going in that way. I managed to get myself a job at a school in Peterlee, which is in County Durham. A school called Shotton Hall, as a PE teacher. So I'd actually achieved my dream. I'd actually, a football, a lad who wasn't good enough to play professional football, but doing PE and getting paid for it. Those 5 years were quite crucial in my future, and I'll tell you why. In terms of the PE side, when I joined in 1975, the school, I was given the year 7, or the first year football team. I played at a decent level. So when I took the first few training sessions, I looked at them and I thought, these are good. These are like good lads. There was about 14 or 15 of them. And as this sort of year moved on, it became apparent that I had about 5 or 6 really high-level footballers. As time went on, two twins played. One played in goal and one played centre-half, called Colin and Keith Oakley. Their dad had played in goal professionally for Hartlepool United. And they basically, those two and another 2 lads, one of them's not with us now, Malcolm Davidson, played for the county, and Colin in 1979 played for England schoolboys in goal.
Wow.
And I got to see him play. And it was like total icing on the cake. And he played for Sheffield United professionally. His brother, twin, played for Crystal Palace, which is quite unusual to have. I know there is brothers, but it was brilliant. It was brilliant. In 1979, just as I was sort of 5 years in, the headmaster changed, and the headmaster wasn't really a supporter of Ray Morton. So it came that there was a promotion available. The guy who started with me, who is a lovely lad, Brian Old, got the promotion, and it really knocked me ending. But I was thinking, what else can I do? What else is there? And this was the biggest decision in my life. There's no doubt about that. Cleveland Police were advertising for PCs. And I thought, so I talked to a few people. I didn't want to go back to Northumbria. I didn't want to go back to home because I had a flat in Peterlee. And Billingham's only 10 minutes down the road from there, Cleveland. So I applied in the beginning of 1980, and I got accepted. Big decision, you know. I've been through college 3 years, I've done 5 years teaching, 8 years of my life gone. But the other big factor was I had met a young lady who had left the school in 1979 called Janet. And she eventually became my wife. So it was another factor that I think I need to get out of school and start another life. So we started, we were going out from 1980. She's a lot younger than me. She's 9 years younger than me. But I joined the police in 1980, went to RAF Dishforth to train, which is the old RAF base. I was there 10 weeks and then got posted to Billingham, which is a small town north of the Tees, which is part of Stockton-on-Tees. Quite quieter than Middlesbrough, quieter than Stockton as well. But I learned my trade over 2 years in uniform at Billingham. Some really funny jobs. I think one of the funniest, it wasn't funny at the time, but one of the funniest is I was just on nights by myself driving my Panda around, and I saw this guy on a bike with a great big satchel. I thought, I'm going to right place at the right time. And I thought that he's worth a stop him, like. So I stopped him, got him over. I said, let's have a look in your bag, mate. It was full of ladies' knickers. Absolutely chocker. Ladies' knickers and bras. So, no, this is not right. This is not right.
Like new ones that he was trying to flog, or was he a knicker sniffer?
He was off the line.
Off the line?
Off the lines, going round, pinch. So locked him up on suspicion of theft, took him to the police station, went to do his house. He lived with his mum and dad. Need to do his room upstairs. You couldn't get in. Stolen clothes. Stealing clothes off the line.
All women's clothes.
All women's clothes. Unbelievable. A big lad as well. So that was one of the first sort of...
What was he doing with the clothes?
Just wearing them in the house.
He was wearing them?
Wearing them, yeah. Wearing them. Yeah. Suspenders a lot. So that was one of my first uniform arrests. Another one worth mentioning is again, I think I worked out that you have to sort of get yourself in the right place at the right time. It's no good just driving around aimlessly. So there was one day I was down at a place called Port Clarence, which is a quite deprived area on the banks of the Tees. And we just saw this lad I was with somebody else. I just saw this lad on a pedal cycle. I thought, that looks too new, that. So we'll give him a stop anyway. Stopped him and he ran off. We got him back. Had a look at it, and it actually had the postcode on, a Billingham postcode. So it was clearly pinned and stolen. Again, locked him up and went to his house, and I think we recovered something like 200 bikes. He'd been a serial bike thief for loads of years. And his mother, like, what's all the bikes down here? Oh, well, he likes bikes and he fixes them for people. Oh, yeah, he fixes them all right. He pinches them. So, stupidly, I put an advert in the local paper saying, we've recovered all these bikes, come and have a look. Well, people were just coming and saying, yeah, that's my bike. Taking the bikes. But we got rid of all the bikes. He got charged with something like 100 stolen bikes.
Grief.
So again, that was sort of me in my formative CID years in uniform.
Did you have to go to any autopsies?
Yeah, I mean, it. What happened was that when obviously sudden deaths, let's say old people have died, I used to get sent to loads. One that sticks out, and it's in the book, is I got sent to one in Billingham just by myself. Ray, can you go to this address? This guy hasn't been seen. The next door neighbour, the back door is slightly open. The next door neighbour doesn't want to go in. So I went and pushed the back door, and went into the kitchen. And this guy is like, obviously dead, been dead a while. But he'd been, he had no trousers on. And it was a very strange situation. Anyway, he'd obviously been living there by himself. And there was like a trail through the front room between empty bottles of brown ale. So he'd obviously, where he walks up to the toilet upstairs. So he's lying there like that. And I thought, well, I could hear something upstairs. And like, there's something upstairs. Went upstairs, and the bathroom, believe it or not, there was a donkey tied to the bath, a donkey it obviously hadn't been looked after. There was manure all over. He'd been keeping a donkey upstairs. Now, you might think, well, why would you keep a donkey upstairs? But apparently he used to keep it out the back, and all the kids were like injuring it and that, so he put it upstairs out the way. So I got the police, the doctor out to certify him dead, and the doctor's like, oh, I'm not going anywhere near anything upstairs. So I got the RSPCA out, and when they came, they said, well, where's the donkey? Like, I said, oh, it's upstairs. Oh, I said, that's going to be a problem. He said, I didn't realise this, but horses and donkeys can't go downstairs because of the way the legs are. So what a carry on they had to get this donkey down the stairs. So that was like...
How did you get it?
Well, eventually they got it. They just pulled it down and got it down.
Pulled it down.
Yeah. But you can imagine in uniform, like, and the doctors, the police surgeon, like, oh, get me out of here. He's dead. Oh, get me out of here. But that was like in uniform. So that was sort of. I used to get sent to a lot of dead bodies.
What about when they cut the bodies open? Did you have to watch one of them?
Yeah.
How's that feel first time seeing that?
It was. How was I put it? I think I became hardened to actually seeing. We were just talking about this a few weeks ago, some of my colleagues, and there was no systems in place to help you. There's no counselling, anything like that. You used to go to jobs and maybe go and have a couple of pints afterwards. But in terms of the actual autopsy or the post-mortem, you got used to it. You got used to it. You got used to seeing the insides of people, and and the one thing that was really good was that in my first few, the police, the pathologist was really good, really explained everything. This is, as he's doing it. And I got to know the pathologist quite well over the years. And I mean, the pathologist was actually the pathologist on the Lee Duffy, my first post-mortem that I went to. But I don't think you can't play down the impact of seeing, a body dead.
Does it make you philosophical about mortality?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, life's very short. Life's short. And I mean, the last few years, I'm sure we'll come on to it. You realise that you make the most of when you're here. Make the most of it. But anyway.
In the early years, then, what was your biggest challenges?
I think in terms of the police, my biggest challenges were adapting to the police culture. It was very much. I was on a shift of PCs. I think one of the challenges I set myself was to get my sergeant's exam out the way as soon as possible, and I managed to do that with just 3 years in. I managed to get through the sergeant's exam because I did think, I've missed out teaching wise on a promotion, but I want to put myself forward for being going up the ranks. So I passed my sergeants in 1983, so I had 3 years in. In 1983, which was quite an influential year, my wife became pregnant. So she had my daughter in 1984. But I got the chance to apply for CID at Stockton as what they call an aide, CID aide. And I applied, I think it was April 1983, got in, and you didn't get any reported crime. You just had to go out and find people on the street crime. So lots of shoplifters, lots of people who were breaking into cars and things like that. Lots of nights, working on nights, doing observations. So it was a real grounding in basic sort of police work, if you like. But we had some fantastic experiences. I mean, one good one was we were having a load of metal thefts from the railway, and there's no CCTV in those days. It was like either catch them on the job or catch them at home with the gear. And we had an observations point on this, looking over on this railway, and we saw this van pull up, and there was 3 or 4 of us start pinching the copper wire, and I mean, there was a lot of money in it, a lot of money in it. Anyway, they'd loaded that much on to the back of the van, the back of the wagon, that they could only drive about 20 or 30 yards and had just collapsed.
Oh, greed.
So we were all jumped on them and got them. And something had like over a ton of copper. Might seem simple, but it was my grounding in dealing with street crime, if you like. In those early days as well, I went on my CID course at Wakefield, which was 10 weeks of debauchery, really. learning a lot of law, but also drinking a lot of beer. But I got through that in 1985. We had our daughter Laura in 1984, and then I was a fully fledged detective. So the early days of I was in Stockton CID, which is not as busy as Middlesbrough, but it's busier than most places. I would say sort of same as sort of any town centre place. One of the jobs that you mentioned there was a murder that occurred in Stockton at a place called Heartburn, and it was involving a 93-year-old woman. And what had happened is there'd been a burglary gone wrong. She'd obviously disturbed them and they'd wrapped her up in a carpet. There was about 100 officers on the job, and it was a big job in those days. This was 1987, 87, 88. And I wasn't actually on the murder inquiry. I was doing just normal CID work. And me and another guy, Alex Watson, had got some information about some burglaries around about that area, but not exactly spot on in Heartburn. So we went over to Middlesbrough to a children's home to arrest these two young lads, 15-year-old. Got them in the car, got a social worker in the car as well. Me and Alex are driving back from Middlesbrough to Stockton, which is only 10 minutes. And as we're driving back, I thought, well, I'll just ask, about what they've done. So I asked one of them, and he said, it wasn't me that wrapped her in the carpet. Well, I nearly crashed the car. And the social worker was shaking. So me and Alex looked at each other, and I thought, we'll get them back to the police station, and then we'll get them arrested for murder. So we got back to the police station and put them in the cells. We'd already arrested them for burglaries, but not murder. So I went upstairs. The incident room was at the top floor at Stockton Police Station. And the DCI, I can still see him sitting there now. We went up and shook his hand and went, "We've done it, boss." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, we've got 2 arrested for murder." "You've what?" "Yeah, we've got 2 arrested for murder in the cells." And anyway, what happened was the two, they blamed each other, and there's a third lad, all juveniles, blamed each other. They all got convicted at court, but about 4 or 5 years later, they appealed on the basis of they weren't mentally fit to stand trial, and they all got off.
Wow.
Yeah, which was absolute tragic. It was definitely them. There's no doubt about it. They've done a cold case review within the last 3 or 4 years, and there's nobody else.
What initial sentence did they get?
They all got found guilty of manslaughter. They all got about 5. I think it was between 5 and 10 years. But they were blaming each other, and they went to trial and got found guilty of manslaughter.
How often does people just confess, like that guy said, it wasn't me who
Very
rolled?
rarely.
Very
rare. Yeah. So that was my first sort of murder involvement, if you like, and I'd only got 7 years servicing, 7, 8 years. So I applied for a couple of sergeant's posts, and eventually I got promoted in 1989 with 9 years service to Middlesbrough. I was one of the few, along with another lad, who we stayed in CID, which was quite unusual then. We normally had to, you had to go into uniform first as a sergeant and then go into apply for CID. So I ended up in Middlesbrough in 1989, which was extremely busy. Lots of street crime, lots of burglaries, lots of assaults, taking cars, etc. It was like a tsunami of crime, really, in those days. I mean, fortunately nowadays it's much reduced. But in 1989, I went on. I was in charge of I think it was about 6 or 7 detectives as a sergeant. I had my own shift, which was great. My boss, my DCI was Brian Leonard, who I knew because he was DI at Billingham for a short time before he got promoted to Middlesbrough. So he was a really competent guy, knew what he was doing, very experienced, looked after me in many ways. So the first major case really in Middlesbrough was the Dr. David Birkett got murdered in early 1990. It was subject of BBC Crime Watch. It happened in February 1990, and we'd no idea who done it. The weeks went past and turned into months. Nothing was happening. The DCI received a anonymous letter basically taunting him that he's not going to catch the killer. And in many ways, that letter was the downfall of the murderer.
Really?
Yeah, it was. And I'll tell you why.
Not like what was the case? The Yorkshire Ripper, there was a lot of fakes, wasn't there, in that one?
This was him.
This was really him.
It was proved it was him eventually. So we basically had a fingerprint, a thumbprint on a carrier bag. The carrier bag was proved to be inside the carrier bag was a hammer that actually was used to kill the doctor. He was hit 19 times in the head. Now, the way that the person got in was he'd put a note through the doctor's door from an existing courier service, Demon Dispatch, saying there's a parcel for you, can you ring this number? The number was a telephone box around the corner. So he'd put the note through, gone to the telephone box. The doctor had obviously rang the telephone box, and then the murderer had gone round and hit him with a hammer and killed him. Not only had he killed him, but he'd put green cord round the doctor's wrists and pulled him around into a back room so that if you looked through the letterbox, you wouldn't be able to see the doctor. So when we arrived, we got the call that his daughter had actually gone and found him, which was tragic, absolutely tragic. So the doctor was found dead. We did a search of the actual premises and found an empty co-op carrier bag. On that bag, eventually we found a partial thumbprint. And also the green cord. Initially, I was involved in trying to find where the green cord was from, and we couldn't find anything anywhere. So we knew we had a thumbprint. In those days, the Fingerprint Bureau, which was at Durham, had to do everything manually. Nowadays, it's done by computer. We just couldn't find anybody to match this thumbprint. So about the beginning of March, maybe the end of March, Brian Leonard decided that everybody that got arrested in Middlesbrough, doesn't matter if it was for shoplifting or whatever, their fingerprints would be compared with this thumbprint. And after about 6 weeks of very painstaking work, Brian Leonard got a call to say, we've found your man. And it was a guy called Reginald James Wilson, who lived in Middlesbrough. He'd been only released in 1989 from a 5-year sentence for a robbery. So he'd only been out a matter of months. So the question was, how do we actually get him? Because he's obviously dangerous. He's obviously murdered somebody. He's murdered the doctor. So Brian Leonard was an ex-regional crime squad officer. So he got the regional crime squad to come and follow him for a couple of days to see what he was doing. In those couple of days, he'd actually burgled a house, rang a local furniture buyer and got them to come and empty the house whilst the police were watching him. So that's how many balls he had, really. So anyway, eventually Brian Leonard said, right, the next day when he comes out, grab him. So they got him. He actually went to a phone box outside his house in Middlesbrough, and they all piled in and got him. He was arrested. When we did the house, so he was arrested and taken to Middlesbrough. When we did the house, it was like a treasure trove of. He'd be in the loft. He'd been practicing the letter that he'd sent to Brian Leonard. He'd been practicing. He'd even left the stencil. It was stenciled. He'd even left the stencil. So that was like a major jigsaw to put together. Under the stairs, we found a rocket launcher. Honestly, a rocket launcher, a big rocket launcher. Guns, crossbows, like an arsenal of bullets, etc., underneath the stairs. What we found later on was that he'd been going out at nights, stalking, animals and living off the land. So I was really pleased Brian Leonard got me to interview him. I interviewed him 13 times and he was strange, to say the least. Me and another detective, Ray Bowes, interviewed him, and we just he is absolutely deranged.
What kind of things was he saying?
Well, it was the way he was looking at you. He wasn't saying much. He was like looking at you as though his eyes were piercing you, He said very, very little.
Like Hannibal Lecter?
I think his solicitor was frightened of him. Honestly, I think his solicitor was frightened of him, Jerry O'Shea. In the 13, when it was a lot of interviewing over several days, he didn't say very much at all. But it was his demeanour and the way he was, and he had like a tattoo down here of a serpent, which made him look.
Bloody hell!
Yeah. Anyway, we put the thumbprint to him. There's no reply. But there was a lot of circumstantial evidence. We haven't got enough time to go through it all. But there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, and he went to trial in 1991, early 1991, and at Durham Crown Court. The judge was a guy called Humphrey Potts, who eventually went to the Court of Appeal. And all the evidence went through. They didn't get the jury didn't get told about the guns, etc., because it would have been prejudicial to them. We had to, all the evidence when he was summing up. He said, "I've never seen a case with so much circumstantial evidence that points to him." So he got found guilty of murder. The jury were then told about the guns, etc., and there's 2 or 3 of them crying, women. So when he told him to stand up, and he wouldn't stand up. He told him to stand up, and he stood up. He said, "For you, Reginald Wilson, life will mean life." He's one of the few people in the country things changed a little bit. He's one of the few people in the country to get a life sentence. Very like the recent events in London. That he's one of the few. He's still in now.
Where is it? Do you know which one?
He's in Wakefield, I think.
Wakefield.
I think in Wakefield. But he's been around loads of prisons because he's a bright. He tried to escape from Frankland in Durham about 12 years ago.
What method?
He had some sort of ladder, made a little ladder, but he couldn't get the ladder through the hole that he'd made. And Franklin's supposed to be high security, like.
Do you know what his behaviour in prison's been like?
It's been outrageous. He's been assaulting people and assaulting prison officers. A friend of mine who I know through the football actually is a retired prison officer and said to us, Ray, he is absolutely not right. You know, he's caused so many problems in prison. I think he's in the top like 6 or 7 in the country for
most dangerous
behaviour.
Yeah. Good grief.
So if he gets out, they'll have to do something about me.
Wow.
And Brian Leonard. But he's served 30 years now.
Good grief.
Not likely to get out.
Wow. What a
That's-
story.
Yeah. And that was subject of a Crime Watch, initially Crime Watch, and then a Crime Watch file after the event. And then year before last, I did a Murder Town, which was part of the Crime and Investigation channel. I did a documentary on Dr. Birkett in Middlesbrough, which was a bit spooky being in the road where he was, where we were found. And I've been in. The good thing about it is that I've been in touch with the doctor's daughter. His wife's now died. The doctor's wife's died, but I've been in touch with the doctor's daughter, and it was lovely to talk to her after all these years.
What was the murderer's name again?
Reginald James Wilson.
I bet you people are going to Google the hell out of that. I bet there's a lot online about him.
There is a lot online.
Yeah. Never heard of that case. That is fascinating.
And the doctor was an eminent skin specialist at North Tees Hospital. Lovely guy.
So unnecessary.
And absolutely unnecessary. Yeah.
What was the next big one you were on then?
Well, the next one, date-wise, was Lee Duffy.
Well, how did Lee Duffy first come on your radar?
He came on my radar when I was called to a shooting in Middlesbrough. What had happened was, I think I must have been 2 or 10 or something. Ray, can you come out? Lee Duffy's been shot. He's in Middlesbrough General Hospital. We've got some descriptions and etc. and of the people who shot him. So I went to Middlesbrough Police Station. Brian Leonard was the DCI. We need to go and see Lee in Middlesbrough General. So I went to see him, and he was the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. Nicest. He said, "Look, Ray," he said, there's no way am I giving you a statement. None. He said, "Please yourself, what you do." He said, "I'm not giving you a statement. I'm not cooperating. That's the end of it." Of course, Brian Lennon and I said, "You need to go back and see him. You need to go back." So I went back. I looked at his foot, and the doctor's saying, if that had been 2 foot higher, he's dead. He's dead. He said it's hit his foot and gone and took the top off his foot. Because what happened was he dived over there was it's like a speakeasy in Middlesbrough, like an illegal drinking den, if you like. These 2 guys had come in, 2 West Indian guys, came in, put the gun up. One of them shot him, and as he's seen them, he's dived over the bar, and the gun, the pellets had hit his foot and hit the bar. So we actually had some material to recover. So I goes to the police station. I goes to the general, and then went back to the police station, and We had no idea who they were. We just knew they were. One of them had like Rasta hair, and then there was another West Indian looking guy. So a few days went past, and then some information came in that it was two guys from West Midlands who, when we did some digging, one of them was wanted for a robbery in the West Midlands already, and then the other one had an associate in Middlesbrough. So me and a DI, Dave Scott, got the job of going down to West Midlands to liaise with them to get two of them arrested. So we went to near Winson Green prison. We had a nice curry beforehand. And then the next morning, early doors, the firearms team, West Midlands firearms team, went and arrested. They wouldn't arrest them without the firearms team because they were known criminals. Anyway, we got both of them arrested, and they were transported back to Middlesbrough. One of them, we separated them obviously. One of them was in a car with the regional crime squad, and then the other one was in a car with me and Dave and the rest of them. And on our way back, although it was probably totally illegal practice, we were saying to them, well, why don't you just admit it? You're going away for 5 or 6 years anyway for this other robbery, because they actually had CCTV for this other robbery. No, I'm not. But he was on the borderline of admitting shooting Lee Duffy. In the end, Lee Duffy never gave a statement, but they decided to prosecute these two, and they got charged. In the end, it didn't go anywhere. The other one, the one who was wanted for the robbery in West Midlands, was charged, and I think he went to prison for 4 or 5 years. But that was the first time that I'd been involved with Lee Duffy.
And what did you learn about Lee through that case? I mean, for people who are not familiar with who he was, who was he?
He was a very prominent enforcer, drug dealer, could have been a handy boxer, could have been. But he was very much an enforcement agency in his own right. Drug dealers, taking drugs off them, taking money off them. Areas of Middlesbrough that he owned, if you like. He was also very heavily involved with Tyneside connections. He was used as a hired hand sometimes if people needed, sorting out. So he, if you like, he was at quite a high level in terms of criminality. And obviously, people don't come up from West Midlands to shoot you and kill you if you're not at a high level. So he was involved in drugs, involved in enforcing drugs, and also a big man, a really big man, and could have been a very talented boxer.
When you saw him then that first time,
yeah,
what was his physique like?
He was big, really, arms 3 times the size of mine, a neck like an elephant, but quite a good looking lad. But he was big. He was about, I think he was about 6'4", something like that.
Like Dolph Lundgren then?
Yeah, and like hands like shovels. You can imagine how, he's been brought up boxing. And I mean, you could imagine him like being on a door. And I think he did work on doors at one stage. But he was very straightforward in his approach. He wasn't going to get involved in, he wasn't abusive or anything, but he wasn't going to get involved in any cooperation with the police. in many ways, he avoided the police, but he was never antagonising. Never antagonising. Very rare. So that was my first sort of feelings about Lee Duffy, that he was a massive handful. Massive handful. It would have taken 4 or 5 bobbies to arrest him.
When was the next time he pops up in your career?
Well, the next time was he got in South Bank, which is a different division to Middlesbrough. Somebody threw petrol over him and tried to set him alight. They didn't harm him much.
Was there a motive behind that?
I think he's obviously been antagonising their family. Because he used to go around Middlesbrough. I mean, we got lots of reports. I wasn't actually part of the reports. We got lots of reports of him going around just knocking people out. You know, obviously a lot of this surrounds drugs debts and drugs dealing. But he also, I think, started to go into the world of it started to get out of hand a little bit. Firearms involved, you know, threatening people. So he was up in the ante. He was up in the as the months went by. He was up in the ante, and people have asked me about him. He wasn't going to last a long time. He wasn't. There was no way, unless he gave up his lifestyle, which he wasn't likely to. There's no way he was going to last very long. So the next time, unfortunately, the next time after that was when I got a phone call in the early hours of the morning while I was in bed from John Kelly, who was the DI at Middlesbrough. Ray, you need to come out. Lee Duffy's been killed.
Hold on, and before we go there, what happened with the petrol situation?
Well, the petrol situation, the guy got charged with grievous bodily harm. In the end, nothing happened about that because of events that were to come.
So he threw petrol on Lee.
Threw petrol on him, lit him, ran off. Lee ran after him, he got burnt a bit, Lee. Put all the petrol out and knocked this guy out outside a pub. We didn't actually deal with it, but that's what happened. So you know, it was it's another event. Could have been a very serious event. But he in the end got charged with grievous bodily harm, that guy. But it didn't end up being convicted of anything because of later events.
So you get a call saying he's dead.
He's dead. We knew that Lee was involved in a lot of stuff, and we knew he was sailing very close to the wind. So I went. My wife said, I said, we're going to, Lee Duffy's been killed, because she knew about Lee Duffy from me having to go down to West Midlands and that, you know. So I went to Middlesbrough and I got briefed off John Kelly. I got the job of going to the morgue with Brian Leonard in the next morning. They hadn't done the autopsy. They hadn't done the post-mortem. That was later. Me and Brian Leonard went to and I can remember it vividly. We went and he was lying on the slab with just something over his modesty. And he looked so peaceful. But I thought to myself, this is like a tragic waste of a person. Because, you know, you looked at him and he was just massive. He was just a big guy. And very few other than a wound under his, in his axilla, which is under your arm, other than the wound there, which we had a look at, there was hardly anything on him. hardly any. There's little grazes here and that, and it was such a waste. And we thought of, by that time, like I had 3 children, and I'm thinking, it's tragic what's happened. I don't care, that he's a drug dealer and that. It was tragic what happened to him. So the autopsy happened. The doctor, the surgeon, who was actually the surgeon I knew, said that if Lee had stood still once he'd been knifed, he'd have still been alive.
Do you know the circumstances of what happened to him?
Yeah, I do. He was, I know fact, and there's a little bit of fiction. The facts are that Lee Duffy and David Allison, who was his murderer, went outside. They were in another different sort of drug den, Afro-Caribbean club on Martin Road. They'd had an altercation inside, and Lee'd said to Allison outside, you need to fight me. Allison later, I'll come on to the court case later. Allison went outside. Lee Duffy, as far as we were aware, didn't have any weapons at all, none. Just had a leather jacket on, which he still had on, which were recovered in the mortuary. Lee King, who was a friend of Allison, gave Allison a knife. As Lee Duffy is coming towards David Allison knifes him in the left armpit. But Lee Duffy doesn't stand still. He runs at, and Allison runs off. Lee Duffy runs after Allison, and basically, as he's running, his lifeblood's pouring out of the wound. So Martin Road was filled with Lee Duffy's blood. Lee King, who'd given the knife to Allison, gets the knife and puts it down a drain in Martin Road. So they don't call an ambulance, they get a taxi, put Lee Duffy in the taxi, and by the time he gets to Middlesbrough General, which is about 5 minutes away, he's dead. He's dead. And like I say, the doctor had said if he'd stood still after he'd been knifed, he'd have been okay and gripped his... So Lee Duffy was basically dead on the way to Middlesbrough Hospital. So we have a taxi, we have Lee as a scene. David Allison gave himself up the next day. Lee King was arrested as well. And there was 2 or 3 others. So we get to interview Lee Duffy, Allison, and he comes up with a tale that Lee Duffy had a gun. Well, there was no gun as far as we are concerned. It was just a straightforward, you've knifed him, you've killed him, it's murder. Didn't really admit anything else. Lee King admitted giving him the knife. So Allison was charged with murder. Lee King was charged with being an accessory to the murder and possession of an offensive weapon, knife. So I was involved in the putting the file together. Wasn't a complicated file. It was assault that had gone wrong, badly wrong. But the court case came to court, pleaded not guilty to murder, sent for trial at Teesside Crown Court. When we went to trial, the barrister, our barrister, said, this is going to be, I think, possibly a manslaughter conviction. possibly. Because we have to prove that he meant to kill him by that one stabbing. I'm comfortable with that. But when you listen to the court case and listen to the defence of David Allison, there was lots of very, what I would call, untruths. For a start, there was no evidence at all, apart from Allison saying that Lee Duffy had a gun. Nobody else saw a gun anywhere. The defence barrister also said that he didn't mean to stab him. He was just using it as defence, which is not right at all. So I felt quite sorry for Duffy's family. A dead man can't defend themselves, can they? You know. And when the jury went out, the defence solicitor, I think, was humming and hawing about whether he's going to go down here. But it was a guy called Jimmy Watson. He stuck with it. He said, "No, we're going for it. We think he's going to get off." Anyway, there was a big sigh, if you like, when the jury came back and he got found not guilty. I mean, you can imagine the impact on Lee Duffy's family, because although Lee was it served a lot of prison, and he didn't deserve that. But that was sort of the end of the Lee Duffy saga as such.
So the guy who won the case then, did he go on to behave himself after that, or did he get in trouble with the law in the future?
Football convictions.
What, hooliganism?
Hooliganism, yeah. But I think, as time, he'd be in his 40s now, probably 50s. I think as time went on, it hasn't been involved in other stuff. But I'm not 100%. Lee King got prison for giving him the knife. Lee King himself got murdered a few years later.
In prison?
No, outside when he got out. He got murdered, and nobody of them aware got charged with his murder. How
was he murdered?
It was in Middlesbrough. It was he'd been I think he'd been knifed. I'm not 100%, because I didn't deal with it. But they got somebody they thought had done it, but I don't think anybody ever got convicted. That may still be an open case.
If you're an accessory to murder, like he gave Lee the knife, and you get convicted of that, what kind of a sentence do you get for that?
You're looking at between 5 and 10 years.
And would you have to serve the whole term, or is that 50%?
It'd be 50%. Yeah. I mean, in many ways, without Lee King giving him the knife, it wouldn't have happened. There'd have been a fight, and that would have been it. Hindsight's a great thing. But Lee King got murdered, I think, about 2008, something like that. Yeah.
And what do you think about all the interest in Lee Duffy that seems to have gained momentum since then?
It's understandable. I don't think there's been anybody anywhere near Lee Duffy for the last, at least the last 30 years since he died. There's been nobody took his place in terms of what he did and his influence, if you like, on the criminal fraternity in Middlesbrough and around the area. And it takes some doing to get to his level, because nobody would challenge him. Very few people would challenge Lee Duffy. I'm not saying nobody would, but very few would. And I think maybe that he's one of these figures that is, as time goes on, people sort of look on him a bit higher in esteem than when he was actually out there doing it.
Did you come across Viv Graham back then?
I didn't. No. We knew about him. We knew about his associations on Tyneside. I learned more about Viv Graham because I went to Northumbria for 4 years as inspector, and I learned more about the Newcastle families and the sort of all the ones who we know about, the Sayers family, etc. I learned more about it then, but it's a very complicated case, that Viv Graham, very complicated, and lots of subplots, etc. So.
And do you know how Viv Graham died then?
Well, I know he was killed. Yeah, he was murdered. I don't know a lot about his actual case, but I know he was quite associated with Lee Duffy. But I don't know at the end of the day what it was. It's a Northumbria case, that.
So when you was in the drug squad then, were you up against organised crime?
Yeah, very much so. I ended up head of the drug squad, both in Cleveland and the regional drugs intelligence unit. Organised crime in terms of Cleveland has been going on for a lot of years. Many importations, heroin, cocaine, ecstasy. One job that I should have mentioned earlier was when I was in the drug squad, was a job of exporting ecstasy to Australia. It's called Operation Stark, and it started in 1986 when I was at NSIS. The Australian police, this is organised crime at an international level. Maybe not quantity-wise, but certainly when I tell you about it. So the Australian police rang me when I was head of DI in charge of the drug squad in Cleveland and said, we've got a guy who's ex-Middlesbrough, who's living in Perth, who we've arrested in possession of thousands of ecstasy. He was a postman in Perth. He's not now. Can you go to this house in Middlesbrough that we found when we've done his house? Well, it looks as though this is the guy who's sending him the ecstasy. What they'd been doing is they'd been sending ecstasy from his house in Middlesbrough to addresses in Perth. Now, this guy in Perth called Reginald Howells, had got a job as a postman. And in Perth, they have outside post boxes like they do in America. So he'd been identifying empty houses, ringing the guy in Middlesbrough and send it to 17 Joondalup Road. So the packages have been coming through the post. And the problem they had was, on this particular day, they had the drugs dog in Perth Airport. And this particular package had broken open a bit. And the dog, although because you can't smell ecstasy, but the dog, which, you know, the dog had actually broken open the parcel. So they had a look in, and all these ecstasy tablets are covered in carbon paper. So they replaced they got the ecstasy out, replaced the tablets, and let it go, let the package go. Got an observation point on this particular post box. The postie turns up and delivers it, right? Then I thought, well, that's strange. Why is he delivering? Why is he just not keeping it? So anyway, about an hour or two later, he comes back in plain clothes, gets it, and they all jump on him. So anyway, I get a warrant out to do the house in Middlesbrough, and it's a lad called Glyn Bartliff, and whose mother is a magistrate. So when I go to do the warrant in Teesside Magistrates, I said, "Oh, this is a magistrate." They give us the warrant. We went and did the house, and it was like a little factory for sending. It was like carbon paper, ecstasy tablets, box, airmail. So when we did, he wasn't there. He was in Ibiza on his proceeds. So he came back to Newcastle Airport, arrested. He made some sort of admissions. The guy in Australia admitted everything. He admitted 2 years of doing this, over £2 million or $2 million. So when we got Bartliff arrested, he got charged and remanded. We started looking at the bank accounts, and he was using a Yorkshire bank in Middlesbrough. So I went to see the bank manager, and of course in those days and now, suspicious transactions need to be reported by the manager, and he hadn't. And he was shaking. I said, "Well, you haven't done your job, lad. When we did the transactions, it was obvious a lot of the stuff had gone through 5 or 6 banks in Perth. So somebody had to go to Australia, and it had to obviously be the DI. So myself and another officer went to Australia for 2 weeks in 1998. In this period, I've been trying to get through my inspector's interview, and I hadn't been successful. It was back end of 1997, and this was the beginning of 98 when this happened. I'd applied. I'd seen Northumbria had advertised for inspectors, so I thought, I'm going to apply. So I did. I did all me interviews and assessment centres, and flew to Australia. So we had 2 weeks in Australia. We also had to visit Sydney to serve some papers on a Cleveland Bobby who had left Cleveland and was part of an operation, an internal operation called Lancet. So we went to Australia, went to Perth, went round the banks, went to Sydney. When I was in Sydney, I got a call from Northumbria Police saying, "You've passed the interview for the inspector. You're going to be promoted to inspector," which was a big deal. It was a big deal because I didn't really want to leave Cleveland, to be honest. Anyway, I got appointed, and I started in August 1998 as inspector at Washington, which is obviously the old George Washington, etc. Before I left, I made the biggest mistake probably of my police career, because I went to see the Chief Constable, Barry Shaw, because I felt as though I wanted to stay in Cleveland as inspector. I'd been acting inspector for over 12 months in charge of the drug squad. And so I'd said to him, I went to see him, and I said to him, "Do you think there'll be any amalgamation of forces?" Because at that time, they were thinking about amalgamating Northumbria, Durham and Cleveland together. No, there'll never be anything, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. So I went to Northumbria. I loved Northumbria. It was great. 4 years there. So that was sort of the end of my Cleveland. I did 18 years in Cleveland before going to Northumbria as inspector and chief inspector. So the bit in the middle we've missed out is 1993 to 96. I got the opportunity to be seconded to the National Criminal Intelligence Service, which is now, it became the Serious and Organised Crime Agency. It's now the National Crime Service in Wakefield. One of the jobs that we had in my early days at Wakefield was a guy called Philip Berryman, who lived in Stockton. I knew him from my Stockton CID days, and he was living well above his means. Well above his means. He had an old scrapyard in Stockton, which used to get a few stolen cars through, but he was living far above his means. And we did some observations on him, and we eventually found a boat in Hartlepool Marina, which is 10 miles from Stockton, that there was lots of activity on. We found out later that he was intending sailing off the coast of Africa, and he was picking up cannabis, lots of cannabis. Nothing happened. This would have been 95. Nothing happened because of the weather. But in 96, he set sail from Hartlepool down the coast, and he ended up in Gibraltar. In Gibraltar, he realised that the boat he had wasn't good enough, wasn't big enough, and wasn't really seaworthy. So he tricked his dad into buying another yacht in Gibraltar. And there was him and two guys, one from Billingham and one from Norton, who were his cabin boys, sailed away. What he didn't know as well was that he was being tracked by the Royal Navy, and that there was tracking devices used. Sailed to the off Senegal. There was over £1 million, I think £1.5 million worth of cannabis, which was a lot. They made a few errors. Firstly, the guys who were bringing the cannabis couldn't speak English, and Phil and them couldn't speak French or Senegalese. So there was a bit of to and fro. They didn't take any food. On the way back, the engine failed, so they had to actually sail. They had to sail to the Azores first, and then back across to all this being tracked, and then back across. They sort of eventually limped into the river, place in Cornwall, and were arrested. He's wrote 2 books, Phil, on this, called The Wacky Backy Boat. He's wrote 2 books on it. I haven't really read them at any length. I've read bits. It's on Kindle, I think. Went to trial at Exeter Crown Court. The 2 cabin boys pleaded guilty. Phil got remanded to Belmarsh Prison as a Cat A, because of his circumstances, let's say. Went to trial and blamed a well-known criminal in Sunderland for forcing him to sail all that way. And the jury accepted that.
What kind of a defence is that?
Unbelievable.
Just blame somebody else.
Blame somebody else.
And he got off on it.
He got off.
Quite clever, though. Very
clever.
Did he have a high-priced lawyer?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
The other two got 5 years each.
Did his dad get any?
His dad got nothing. His dad, I think after a while, his dad realised that he'd been hoodwinked into buying this boat. But Phil's now, I think, living somewhere in the northeast.
So if he beat that case, how can he write books about it?
Because he wasn't convicted.
But doesn't that isn't that an admission of guilt that would give new evidence to provide a new trial?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything in the book.
Is there a statute of limitations?
Yeah. No, I think there's nothing in the book
Incriminating him. Gotcha.
It's all very, round the outside.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds
like you'd be an interesting podcast.
I didn't really want to read the books, to be fair. I know what happened.
Where's he based now? Do you know?
He's somewhere in Durham, I think.
I'll have to reach out, see if he wants to come on and give his side of the story.
There's a thing on YouTube.
Is there?
Yeah. There's a YouTube piece on him.
Has he done any interviews? Do you know?
I don't think he has.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
He's certainly an interesting guy.
Yeah. So as head of the drug squad then, I mean, we've interviewed ex-undercover cops.
Yeah.
We've interviewed ex-prison guards.
Yeah.
And the common theme that's reoccurring is now there's so much money in the black market for drugs that gets bigger every year.
Yeah.
It will corrupt some members of every profession it comes into contact with. The drugs will always flow no matter who's arrested.
Yeah.
So do you have any, how did you stop the guys under you from raiding a house, seeing a bunch of cash, seeing a bunch of drugs and putting it in their own pockets? How do you prevent that?
I think it's the inspector role gives you the clue on what you should be doing. That means inspecting. You can't be sitting in an office as head of a drug squad. You have to be out there doing it and looking at people and checking and I think it's part of, if you like, the Cleveland past. If you look at it, Cleveland police past has been about corruption, very much so. And there's various figures who were mentioned over time. But a lot of them, they weren't supervised properly. They weren't supervised properly by the higher echelons. If you're chief inspector, there's a superintendent above you. And I would always expect my superintendent to be asking me what I'm doing, how am I doing it, what's this, what's that. And also, I think one of the things I've learned over the years is look at things properly. Don't skim them. When I was, after I'd been in the drug squad, I was head of crime scene investigation. And when you get a belly in your belly, you think this person's not right. We had a guy who, I won't name him, but was a civilian CSI. And I just didn't take to him at all.
What does that mean first, a civilian CSI?
Crime scene investigator. So you go around doing burglaries and the murders and the rapes and the robberies. But
he's a civilian. He's not a member of the police. Is that?
He is a member of the police, but he's a civilian member of the police.
What is a civilian member? What does that mean?
Well, that means you're not sworn. You're not an officer. You're not a police officer. You're a member of support staff.
I see. Support staff. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this guy, and bearing in mind I was head of CSI for 4.5 years, I'm thinking, he's so full of it. It's not right. And a couple of times I'd put him on an action plan, or we'd had words or whatever. Anyway, I left. I retired, and I think it was 2011. They did an inquiry into he used to do the arsons, any fires or anything like that. They did an inquiry into this guy and found that he'd been purporting to have an arson qualification that he didn't have. So there was dozens, if not, I don't know how many cases, and he'd worked in 3 different police forces. So they had to go through all the cases and make sure that, his evidence hadn't tainted the case.
Did some get overturned?
I think some did. So, that's going back to your point about what do you actually do? You actually inspect people and you actually supervise people properly.
You've got to be there on the raids and everything.
You've got to be there. You can't be on every raid, but you've got to know how things work. And it's the same in any job, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the same in any job.
Yeah.
That you have to be able to say, hand on heart, I know that person. If they've done it wrong, they've done it wrong. But there's no way around in the police not inspecting people and not supervising people. That's what it's about.
You mentioned earlier when you were talking to that one suspect, how he was just staring at you and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
When you do interrogations then,
Yeah.
do you just develop a feel for people over time? And
You do.
Did you have any other really bizarre suspects that you were interviewing in?
Yeah, we had loads. I think with interviewing changed with the introduction of audio. And then obviously nowadays you have audio and you have video, CCTV, television. I think things changed as soon as the audio came in because you really had to be prepared for the interview. You had to, go through, and I was mentioning to Jamie on the way down, your first part of the interview is them talking. It's called their agenda. The second and third parts of the interview are you, if they've told lies, challenging those lies. And the third part is then hitting them with any evidence. Because you wouldn't go into somebody and say, I've got a fingerprint. You wouldn't do that. So there's tactics involved, there's expertise involved, and there's experience of interviewing people. I actually do it all the time and I don't even know I'm doing it. You suss people out, and you're like, my wife says, why were you not talking to him? I don't like it. But that's 30 years of the police.
What were the most bizarre interview experiences?
My most bizarre, I think, was a guy who, when I was in CID at Stockton, who said that me and another guy had been spitting on him.
You?
Yeah, spitting on him.
Prior to coming in to the interview?
No.
But during the interview?
Yeah, he after the interview, he said he'd been spitting on us. What? What would we spit on you for? What? Anyway, nothing happened in the end. But he went to court the next day, kept him in, he got charged. And his brief stood up and said, they've been spitting on him. I want hair samples of... I said, well, first up, we're quite willing to give samples, but and the magistrates went, no, we're not doing it. So that spitting on him. I've had a couple where they've actually never said anything.
Pleading the fifth?
No, not even that. Nothing.
Won't even tell you the name.
Nothing. We had one who was a lad in Stockton when I was, and from the time he was arrested, he smashed a window or burgled a shop, caught with a gear, etc. From the moment he got arrested by the police, never said a thing. Wouldn't tell the magistrates, nothing. Went to prison as Mr. X. Went to prison as Mr. X. Got remanded. We don't even know who he is. We did his fingerprints. We still couldn't find him. And in the end, I think the magistrates got sick of him and bailed him. He was never to be seen again. But that was true. And then there was another one where it was a young lad in Hemlington when I was DS at Hemlington, and from an Irish Romany background, And he'd been caught burgling a house in Middlesbrough. Got him arrested. Down to Middlesbrough police station. Ray, can you go down and supervise it? Went down and he wouldn't stand up. He wouldn't stand up. Wouldn't speak. Wouldn't stand up. I said, oh, let's just leave him down there. So we interviewed him with him lying down there like that and doing notes. Did he sign there? No. He never even said no. He just laid there. It's another one where he got carried into the magistrate's court, and they like half stood him up, and the magistrate said remanded. So those are like extreme examples of what happened.
What about people getting aggressive with you or threatening you and your family?
We've only really had one over the years that threatened the family, and it was when my kids were younger. He, in the end, we had to get a bleeper alarm in my house.
Was he a credible threat then?
I don't think so. I'm of the feeling that if you treat people right, and this is over 30 years, if you treat people right, they respect you. If you treat people bad, they treat you badly. And I always, no matter whether it was a murderer or somebody locked up for shoplifting, I always treat them right. Never, no dirty tricks. You don't need to do dirty tricks. You don't need to do them. There's some people that are more respectful of than others. But even the most awkward customers, I think if you're respectful to them, it does. Because the solicitor then can't say, you've done this, you've done that, because I haven't.
Get the case thrown out.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very few. The only one case, I think, over my career that all my life flashed in front of us was when my younger service, where we used to do notes, contemporaneous notes, and get them to sign them. And I put a case file in, and the case files used to have to get checked, etc. And I'd put a case file in, not knowing that I'd missed a sheet out. I'd left a sheet, and it was on my desk. Not by anything other than being a bit lackadaisical. So it went to court, went to trial. The judge gets it and goes, "Where's page 9? Where's page 9? But it wasn't, I'd missed it out. It was on my desk. It was in my desk. And so anyway, he said, if you don't, that's right, the judge said, if you don't produce it within like 4 hours, I'm kicking the case out. So I was only DC then. The detective sergeant, get yourself over there, Stockton, have a look. Anyway, I found it, took it back. I got a right bollocking for it, but that was sort of the most extreme example, really.
How did you recruit informants?
Good question. I ended up being a bit of a sort of doing courses for people recruiting informants. So the answer to your question is as many different ways as you can. That's from the person in the street who sees something, doesn't tell anybody, and then later on remembers, to the person who you've had in custody, they've told you all sorts, you've tested it, and it's right. So my way of recruiting people was varied. Mainly, if I look at my first informants, they were all people who were very busy doing burglaries, thefts, etc., who are telling you stuff that either they've done with somebody or they know about it or they've bought the stuff. So it's going from that level, from the sort of busy acquisition of property to drugs. Now, drugs, you either deal in them, you're either taking them, or you're overseeing that. So it's virtually impossible to get to let's say, somebody who's high up in the organised crime. It's virtually impossible to get to them from a user level. It's impossible. But you can get to them from a dealer level. You can get to them from let's call it a super dealer. So it was through associates. You're not necessarily speaking to the main man or the main person. We would target an associate who's maybe had enough of them. Disputes between dealers.
That's what happened in my organisation, Wildman and Skinner. Yeah,
Disputes.
They fell out.
And they then go to the police.
Yeah.
Protection of them is a key.
Just to clarify, it's Skinner who went to the police.
Yeah. Protection of these people is so important. You know, you look at some people and you think, you're not going to be an informant. You're not. You're not up to it. You haven't got the bottle. So testing them out on various smaller jobs. But my whole way of running informants is being absolutely documenting what you do, because sooner or later that documentation might go in the public eye. So my ways of getting them are changed as I went on. And, you know, I mean, I ended up, when I was at NSYS, being involved with intercepts, telephone intercepts. Massive. Before intercepts were fashionable, if you like. Now, what you learn on intercepts couldn't be used in court. But it was a way of actually recruiting informants, because you knew what they'd been doing. Mm-hmm. And they didn't know how you knew. So that was like the mid-90s. Things have changed nowadays. But the answer to your question is there's so many different ways, opportunities. I've had friends, you know, non-police friends, who've become informants because they know so much. So I think that's the higher levels, which we ended up running. It's very, very, you've got to be very careful, because, you know, there's lots of things can go wrong.
Did you send them out with like wires on and stuff, recording people? Yeah,
I've done undercover work with informants. You know, running informants with undercover officers, wired up, test purchases.
Did any of them get identified by the criminals and there was a situation?
We've come close a few times. We've come close. You had to pull them out.
What were the red flags there?
Searching them all the time, searching the officers, following them home, trying to get the phones off them, that sort of stuff. Being an undercover officer is a really, really, I applaud them. Because it's an extremely difficult area of policing. But still goes on, still happens.
One of the most heart-wrenching areas of policing is crimes against kids.
Yeah.
Were you ever involved in investigating any of that?
I was, unfortunately, and before the days of child protection units. One really tragic case in Billingham when I was DC was a guy he was a window cleaner, and there was this young lad who was disabled. He identified this kid as a potential victim and used to do the windows. We got a call to say, look, I'm not happy with this guy. He keeps coming in the house to do the windows, which I thought you did the windows outside. But and anyway, when we discovered what he'd been doing, this kid who was severely disabled, been going into the kid's room and buggering him.
Oh my God! Oh.
But not only that, these were the days of the VHS video camera. He'd been actually filming himself buggering the kid,
Creating evidence that could be used against him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we found out about it, did his house, and found all the tapes.
Oh Jesus!
What
a monster.
He got 12 years.
It's not enough, is it, for these
No,
people?
And I mean, the kid, bless him. This kid was helpless.
Oh Jesus!
So that was a particularly. I mean, I suppose the only positive thing that happened was he did admit it because he couldn't do anything else.
Was there other victims, or
No, it was just that kid.
so you must have a good sense of achievement to get a monster like that off the street?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
This was like the late 80s, so it's a long time ago. But I mean, the biggest problems, I think, child protection wise, I found, particularly when I was in charge of the drug squad, we'd go to houses in Middlesbrough, drugs raids, and children, babies. In my first week as inspector in Middlesbrough, I took 2 babies off addicts. One of the women shouted as we were taking the baby out, "And you can effing keep the baby," which we did.
Bloody hell!
I mean, it's heartbreaking, and that part of it, dealing with the kids, and particularly, where you go into properties that are absolute tips, and you think, well, these kids shouldn't be in here, So lots of that sort of stuff.
Why did you eventually retire?
Just 30 years in. I'd done my time. Because I taught before I was in the police, I thought I'd go back to teaching, and I did, and I have. In fact, now even after 10 years, I'm still doing a little bit. I was drawn very much to special education, and I've worked in various schools in Teesside. I work for a firm called Nudge Education now, which deals with kids who aren't at school. You can imagine with the last couple of years we've had that a lot of kids are not going to school. And Nudge, basically either kids who are not attending or won't attend, or kids that have been excluded. So I feel as though I'm putting a bit back, And after what 40 odd years, I'm still using my teaching's qualification.
Yeah, you're a good man indeed, but you have had some bad luck in recent years, according to Jamie.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, my daughter, my oldest daughter Laura, was in child protection. She had 7-8 years servicing, and she contracted breast cancer. So unfortunately, she passed away in March last year.
my
March
God.
2019, sorry.
How old was she?
She was 35.
Bloody hell.
We've got two grandchildren, Lola and Sammy, who are now 6 and 8.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely, it's undescribable, the effect on the family. Our husband Steve is a sergeant in Middlesbrough. He's kept going, but you can imagine the weight. You can't describe it.
Yeah.
It's undescribable. And I mean, she was the light of our life. Police officer, servant police officer, in child protection, loving her life, netballer, foot and mum. So we'll never get over that. But the people around us support us really well. You know who your friends are. Do you know what I mean?
And you're still doing your sports?
I'm still doing my football. I'm involved with Billingham Town, which is the local non-league side. I'm still involved with that, and I love the football. And I had an operation in March last year on my bowel, and I lost 3 stone.
Jesus.
So I'm fully recovered. But the NHS, unbelievable.
What was the diagnosis?
It was a non-malignant growth on the bowel. So they did an ileostomy, which is a bag. I had that for over a year. But I went back in April. The same doctor did the operation, Dr. Gill. Fantastic, unbelievable. And since April, I've just got better and better and put the weight back on, and I'm back to doing a little bit of teaching as well.
So they removed a tumour?
No, it was a tumour, yeah.
A tumour?
Tumour, yeah.
Was it a really big thing? Or?
Yeah, well, you'd feel it in there. Yeah,
could you?
Yeah, Sean, it was. And when I first went to the doctor, this was in January last year.
Yeah.
When I first went to the doctor, I wasn't very well. Went on holiday and I wasn't very well. Went to the doctors and he said, it's your diet. I said, no, it's like I can feel it in here.
Yeah.
So I went to see another doctor and, and he said, no. He said, you're going to the local hospital. Get yourself up there.
Yeah.
Went to see the specialist and they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I was in hospital about 8 days getting the operation and then put the bag on. And what happened was, beginning of this year, I was so hacked off with it. I was thinking of going private. So I got myself booked in to a private hospital, paying the money to $6-7 grand or whatever it was. Anyway, I get ready on the day. They did all the tests. The guy who's doing the surgery comes in on the Friday and says, I'm not doing it. Said, you're dehydrated. So they didn't do the operation. So he said, you have to go back to the doctor, back to North Tees, and have another go. Fortunately, lockdown was just finishing. So when I first had it, it was the beginning of lockdown. When I had my other operation to get rid of it, it was the end of lockdown. So I got a call on a Friday from North Tees saying, will you come in on the Monday and the doctor will do you? I'm back to normal.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So we've had a bit of a challenge in the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely.
From a good point of view, my youngest daughter is now pregnant.
Oh.
So I'm expecting now a 4th grandchild. In February last year, we had my 3rd grandchild. My son Darren had Harper.
Congratulations.
So we're looking at, I think it's April next year that Michaela's.
And what made you want to come out with a book about your life story?
It started from Jamie Boyle. He'd interviewed us about Lee Duffy, and I was telling him about all the other things that have happened, and my family and everything, and and what had gone on. And he said, Ray, you're going to have to write a book.
Yeah.
After that, then the documentary came with Dr. Burkett, and things just sort of took off. I always thought that the book would be a tribute to Laura. And there's a lot in the book about my family and about, my past, and a lot about music and football, and it's sort of me, in words. And I've never. It's been good for the family, because part of what I did was a bit of genealogy as well, and the genealogy takes you back to on my mum's side, takes us back to the 1600s.
Wow.
Which is a long way.
What was your family up to in the 1600s?
There were fishermen.
Fishermen.
In Berwick. Fishermen in Berwick. And the reason I know is that my parents, my mum's side, were all freemen of Berwick. And the freemen of Berwick records are absolutely spot on. So I can tell what everybody, a lot of my mum's side were from Berwick. My dad's side were all from either Northumberland and then came to Tyneside for shipbuilding, a lot of shipbuilding and heavy industry. So that's the sort of and I mentioned about my Uncle Arthur. A lot of them fought in the war. All three of me mum's brothers fought in the war, Air Force, Navy, and Army. And my cousins, I've got lots of cousins. We had once I started doing the book, we had a Skype call, and there was 15 or 16 of us. We'd learned so much from each other. It was great. I bet you've never done that.
No.
And it really is.
Yeah.
It really is beneficial, all the cousins. Yeah, so that's in the book as well.
You triggered a question there then.
Yeah.
Freemasons in the police.
Yeah.
Do you have any knowledge of that?
Yeah, I do, yeah. I'm not being a Freemason, but I know a lot of people who were. I think in years gone by, it was a little bit of a help to get you up the ladder. But there's lots of people who are Freemasons who didn't get up the ladder. So I think it's fallen out of use just over time, I think. But maybe going back to the 60s and 70s, it probably was part of the deal, getting the up the ranks.
Can't wait to read the book then, and a huge thank you to Jamie for organising the interview today, and we're going to be doing the audiobook for you. And a huge thank you to you, Ray, coming in.
I've enjoyed it.
You've been through so much. It's such an amazing story. I can see this book doing really well. But you're so stoic as well, and you're like, you just got, there's something about you, some really positive. You can just see how you've made all these positive changes in society, and you've got that karma going forward. So we salute you for all this brilliant work that you've done.
Yeah.
So for the people watching this, then please let us know in the comments what you thought about this video. All the links will be in the description box below this video for Jamie's work and whatever he's doing with Ray. Any socials will be down there, and Jamie's YouTube channel. So please support what he's doing. He has arranged multiple guests for us over the years. Some brilliant guests like you've heard today. So it's very important that we support his work as well. So huge thank you for coming on, Ray. Yeah, appreciate
Thanks.
it. Cheers.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.